I'm born of Nigerian parentage, and I was fostered from 6 weeks old to a white family. So I was one of, have you heard of the concept of farming? It was the first time, and I was 17 years old, that I had been asked, what do you think? It was the first time I've been asked, what is your opinion? And I think that was one of the real light bulb moments which shaped me in terms of, I have an opinion. How do we as organizations shape the learning to prepare for that future? Yeah? And until there's an awareness of this, yeah, and conscious decisions to change that, nothing's gonna change.
I'm joined today by a true visionary leader who has been making waves in senior organisational change and learning and development for over 15 years. His career has spanned across both the public and private sectors, and he's served as a senior manager in local government, leading regulatory functions and advising on governmental panels. Today, he's the founder and CEO of AKD Solutions, an international consultancy that's all about stimulating brilliance and working with senior leaders in the UK and across the globe, creating transformational development experiences that drive real change and feeding his passion for disruptive learning. Akin Thomas, welcome to the Social Corner.
Thank you so much.
I'm really honoured that you have joined me today. We ran into each other last year at the UK Black Business Show. And I just remember all the excitement that you had, like that you'd written this book and, you know, you were really excited about what it was going to do and how it was going to change the face of things. And what I remember going home thinking is, that is so Akin. You know, transformation, change, dominion, like there were so many buzzwords going around in my head of recognizing what you were talking about and who I know you to be. And so today I'm really excited to talk to you about the man behind this and how we've got to this book and what the book is about. But I don't think I can get into all of that without going to your early years and understanding how the leader in you developed in the first place. You know, I talked about some of the amazing things you've done and where you've led governmental policy, etc. But growing up, what kind of experiences and values shaped your perspective on leadership and problem solving?
I think we have to, so if we go right back, I'm born of Nigerian parentage, and I was fostered from 6 weeks old to a white family. So I was one of, have you heard of the concept of farming?
Yeah. Oh, I did not know this.
Okay, so I was one of those children that was basically farmed. So I lived in Havant, which is near Portsmouth, the only black kid in the area. And basically, so it was quite a common thing for Nigerian parents to basically privately foster you with a white family, okay? And so that was my experience of growing up. So the reality is that it had a major shaping of my life because I am the only black kid in the area. Yeah, it was a very rough space. It was a combination of Dockers and an overspill from London. The reality is that I was one of maybe 4 or 5 children who left school with O levels. Yeah. And in fact, one of the stats from my school, more kids probably went to prison than went to college.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that was very, very fundamental because I just knew that I didn't belong. I knew that there was something more. It's very interesting because like a lot of people grow up with the experience of teachers not liking them, but I just didn't have a context for why I wasn't liked. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. And so it kind of gave me this inner burn that there's more to life. And I knew that this wasn't it.
Did you know they weren't your parents?
Yeah. Yeah. So what
you
happened?
Understood what had happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you live what's happened. You don't necessarily understand what's happened
okay.
because up until a point, I used to come and see my mum and my family every kind of 2 weeks. So my foster mother would bring me to London. to get my hair cut and all of that type of thing. But like at a certain age, I can't remember when, my mum went back to Nigeria, and then I just totally detached from my family. So from around, say, from 10 to maybe 20, I didn't have any engagement with my family whatsoever. Yeah.
Oh.
And so, again, these are the things that shape you, because you're feeling very isolated, because I felt very rejected and abandoned. So even though the letters would come from Nigeria, I wouldn't respond. I would throw them in the bin. My dad kept on writing. I didn't meet my dad until I was 28. And so I had no time for him at all. And so you are very much, it's me against the world. But with this, still with this inner understanding that there's something more. And I think that something more was always driving me. Yeah. And I remember from a very young age, I just heard it in my head, you were never put on this earth to be poor. Yeah. Even though you're living in an impoverished circumstance. So my coat was my blanket. Yeah, I didn't have a blanket. There was no heating in the house, yeah, other than a fire. So my coat was my blanket at night. So when we're saying that, yeah, we grew up in a very impoverished situation, you know, we're not exaggerating. It was like, but you don't know, because everywhere else around you is the same.
I feel like you've just dropped a bomb there, and I can't move past that. I can't. So I understand what you're saying at this point, but I think because there's many people who won't have heard of farming or the reasons behind it, and you said it, as you said, it's quite commonplace within.
It was, yeah.
It was back then. What is it, and why does it happen?
Whew. What is it and why does it happen? There's a film called Farming, and if you go on, I think you go on Amazon, you can find it, but you have to be in the right frame to watch it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is, because I watched this story. In fact, I think it was Black History Month in 2023. They had this program where a group of people who had been farmed came together and just talked and show their stories. And I remember watching it, and I was watching it with my wife, and she was watching me watching the program. And she said, "Are you okay?" And I'm thinking, "Yeah, I'm okay." But like, you know, then suddenly you question yourself, "Why are you okay?" But like, I did not have a particularly bad experience. Yeah, so I have to kind of make that clear. But many people have very, very bad experiences, so that they were only taken for the money. Yeah, there was no care. Yeah, there was no love. There was no understanding of how to take care of them. And that was very commonplace. And also, the reality is that some people, there were stories where the parent would come after 7 years and just pick up and go. Yeah, just literally, yeah. So there was just so many variables to this story. It was incredible, yeah. And I think what you have is really interesting, because I went to we went to a talk, and like, even my old senior management team, 3 of us were part of this.
Oh.
Yeah. And so you got a lot of very damaged people from this process. A lot of very damaged people.
Did the parents do that because they thought they were giving you a better life?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So my mum came here, she was working, she was studying, she was probably working 2 or 3 jobs, she was studying, etc. Yeah. So there was this kind of understanding that actually, if we place them here, I can get on, do what I need to do, and come and get you when things are better and when I'm in a better position. So, you know, am I angry? Not really angry. I think I come to the realization that they did the best with what they knew. And I think you have to almost recognize, because you know, a lot of people got lots of beef with their parents. Yeah. But I think that if you start with a premise that hopefully they did the best with what they had and what they knew, it kind of gives you some sense of peace, because otherwise you would just get messed up.
There's 2 things that are really coming to mind as you're talking about this. One, I'm recognizing the familiarity of it in the Caribbean culture. Not necessarily the same as how you describe it, but a lot of, say, 1st, 2nd generation came over here and left their children.
Yes.
You know, with grandparents and so ever. And when I meet those children who've come over, there's so much resentment there for having been left behind and not, you know, and that attachment stage is so pivotal. So there's that one thing. But then also just I suppose picking up on what you've just talked about, understanding the premise for it, and you having not met your dad till you were 28, hadn't seen your mum till you were...
Again, so I had a relationship with my mum, but she went back to Nigeria, and I think, if memory serves me right, I didn't see her again until I was 28. It was the same visit. So because like, I'm the youngest, so I have a brother and sister, and they were kind of older, so there's about a 15, 16-year gap. So they were in London with my mum, and I'm kind of fostered. And then they start to all go back to Nigeria. So my brother goes back, my sister goes back, my mum goes back, and then suddenly it's me here.
So at what age did you understand the premise of it for yourself?
I don't think I really thought about it until maybe late 20s. I think the issue for me is this. One of the problems a lot of Nigerian parents did, my parents did, if you misbehave, you're going home. So therefore, home is a punishment. So why do you want to go home? Yeah. So therefore, going to Nigeria was never on the radar because it was if you misbehave. I mean, like, I talk to some of my friends now, and it was, you're going on holiday, and then 10 hours later, you'll find yourself in a boarding school. Yeah. And you're not coming back for another, good 6-7 years. Yeah. And so therefore, they created this image of home, which was a very negative image. And so for me, one of my drivers is that when I come home, I'm going to be somebody and show you, that you screwed up.
Right.
So that was a bit of a burn to me in terms of you left me, so therefore watch me.
Watch me. And and I suppose what I'm thinking about is your identity in those pivotal early stages. Were you able to find your identity or sit comfortably with an understanding of who you were out of context? I mean, you're being raised by white...
No.
Okay.
No.
I won't finish the rest of the question.
Absolutely. It's like, and again, it's about you, because I think what happens is that in any context you exist until you have the ability to reflect, because I think reflection gives you context. But when you don't have an understanding, you're a child, you understand, the reality is like, you think, because I was not allowed out to play, so therefore I'm always in the house, so therefore your context is in this space. And if that's your context, that's your context. You know that you don't belong, you know that you're different, you know that you're experiencing racism, but you don't know what racism is because it's not a term that's been given to you. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, you just know you're being othered.
Yeah. Okay, but you don't know what it's all about, other than you know that there's something about you that's different, and so therefore you have to become a good fighter. You have to become fast and all of these things. Does that make sense? To become accepted. I remember getting, when you got battered at school, you got battered. You understand, sort of thing. So these are, we're talking about a rough environment. So these, in terms of identity, it was an identity of not necessarily woe is me, because that was never, it's just that it just doesn't feel right. And you're existing and surviving, but you don't know you're just existing and surviving because you have no more context to say that there is more to life than this. We had 3 channels on TV, so therefore there's no context beyond 3 channels. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so basically you just are, and it's not until you kind of get an opportunity to sit back and think. So the first time I went to Nigeria, I get it. Literally, because you have these traits, but you don't know where they come from. You know that they're different from your peers, but there's these inner things in you in terms of that entrepreneurs, that thinking, that drive, but you're thinking, you don't know the context. Went home, it's like, oh.
Isn't that amazing? And I think that really speaks to the nature-nurture debate.
Yeah.
About the fact that you've not been within that context, and that's the
Yeah.
Suddenly there's an understanding, a placement there of this is why I am the way I am.
But even then, you still don't belong.
Okay, explain that to me.
The reason is that because it was like you when you see the vibrancy, you see the energy, you say, okay, I can understand it. It's almost like jigsaw pieces come together, but there's an unfortunate jigsaw piece that actually but you still don't absolutely belong in this context. Yeah. You don't speak Yoruba, so therefore big disadvantages. So people are talking about you, laughing at you, etc., 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 because you're this kid from London or you're this person from London. And so you find yourself in this situation where you never ever quite fit. And I think that one of the things I had to come to terms with is just never fitting in. It's just being part of who I have been growing up. So yeah, fundamentally I fit in 3 places: in my workplace, because it's mine. Yeah, okay. My family and church. But every other context has always been like, not quite there.
You know, there's so much clicking in my head at the moment, because one of the buzzwords, the strong points of what I know of you is this understanding, this drive for people to understand their identity, but not necessarily just, in context of their culture or whatever, but their identity in Christ, their identity in terms of their faith, and because you are a Christian, and I wonder if that is stemming from that displacement, so to speak, of understanding yourself in context, but not having context around you. Is there any link there?
Potentially, yeah, because I think one of the things for me, it really grieves me when I see people who are trying to be somebody else. Yeah. And I think one of the things I see is people spending so much time, trying to be liked. And to be liked, they're creating this facade or this imagery of them, which is not them. Yeah. But for them, this is the acceptable face of what you will accept. So therefore I have to be this. Yeah. And there is so much danger in wanting to be validated by people. Yeah. Because once I know I validate you, I can unvalidate you. So I've got you. I've got power over you. Yeah. And that is the reality for so many people in society. Most people in our society are not comfortable in their own skin. It's just a fact.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. But if you understand the power of validation, and I understand the power of how I can make you or break you, and that's what society does. Yeah. It can make you or break you. I'm in a very powerful, but you're in a very vulnerable position. And most people, in my opinion, live that for a significant proportion of their life if they don't break it at all.
Wow. So thinking on those lines and going back to you in your earlier years, I suppose obviously we understand that validation wasn't there because, as we said, you're out of context, so to speak. How did you come through that time, that period, and find a way to, I suppose, have vision? You talked about the fact that you heard, was it an audible voice? We're not meant to be poor.
I was never put on this earth to be poor. I can remember that word so strongly. And it's not about necessarily lots and lots of money, but it's just about there's an enrichment of me as an individual, which I have to share with others.
Right.
So how did you cope? You cope by, actually I was smart. I was pretty fast. I was pretty good at athletics, sort of thing. So you kind of get a sense of a purpose for achievements. Yeah. And I think for me, as you mature, as you get older, there's a sense of actually, okay, what else is this outside? Yeah. So for me, my university decision was based upon how far can I get away from this place? Yeah. So I literally looked on the map. Yeah.
Yeah.
Loughborough University. I was good at sport. Yeah. I wanted to do psychology. And the reason I wanted to do psychology is because, again, life at school, it was the art of regurgitating information. If you can remember information and repeat it, you were successful. Yeah. If you were not able to repeat information, you were unsuccessful. And it wasn't until I did an A-level and a teacher asked me, so what's your opinion? I was in a sociology class. She goes, so what do you think? It threw me. I mean, what do you mean? What do you mean, what do I think? Tell me the answer. That's because that's the learning process. And that, again, never left me, because if you think about it, most people don't even know how their opinions have been formulated.
That is very true.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So why do you think like you think?
Yeah.
They don't know. It was a mind-blowing. So I think if you think about it, it was a literally, what do you mean, what do I think? It was the first time, and I was 17 years old, that I had been asked, what do you think? It was the first time I've been asked, what is your opinion? And I think that was one of the real light bulb moments which shaped me in terms of, I have an opinion. I have thoughts. Yeah. And it's kind of emulated now to the point where I have thoughts and I have ideas that I can share with the world that have value. Yeah. And I think it stemmed from that one moment in the classroom where a teacher asked me, what do you think?
What did that moment do for you?
Open the world up that was never there before. It opened up a world in terms of understanding that education is far more than what it had been up until then. And it's interesting because like I was a top student, but I did really poor in my GCSEs and O levels. Yeah, for some reason I bombed out. But again, do you know when you start to unravel, you're thinking, oh, there was a reason for this. I was supposed to get 10 A's, etc., and I bombed out. But that moment, and therefore what I couldn't do, I wanted to become an air traffic controller. Yeah, but I failed at maths.
Okay.
No, I did okay at maths, but I looked at the A-level curriculum and I figured, this is hieroglyphics. Yeah, and in the moment I switched. Right. But you can start to see it's all part of a plan, and being able to then go into sociology, which was never on my game plan because air traffic control has nothing to do with sociology.
Wow.
Yeah, but in that moment, I remember I had to make a decision. I switched. Suddenly I'm doing communication, sociology, and my world changed literally in those moments.
I'm leaning into the leadership side of things because obviously that's played such a huge part. When that switch took place, what kind of qualities did you see in yourself that have played a part in serving you to this point today?
I think I always had influence. Yeah, I always had influence amongst my peers. Yeah. Yeah, that stands out. I always had influence. There was so many moments because like, I remember, for example, my friends were all like, they all supported Portsmouth, football club, and they were fanatical, and they would be on the terraces on a Saturday afternoon doing all the kind of Nazi salutes, etc. But Akin, you're not like them. You're not like the rest of them. You understand? And they would come to me, and I would be advising them, etc. And I was influential. So I remember always having influence. I remember being pretty smart. And so I think those things started to formulate. And I was always quite likable. Yeah. Some people may question that. Yeah. But I was always quite likable. And I think, I also think I always cared about people. I've never really had a selfish nature about me. I've always kind of been about people. And I think those are the kind of traits that started to shape me. And I think I've had a character that people have kind of felt able to gravitate towards. So yeah.
So you noticed those things?
Yeah, I think so. On reflection, yeah.
Yeah. So it's the packaging really, because obviously you've noticed those things. You're, 17 at this point?
Yeah, it's 17, 18, yeah.
And, at a pivotal point in life, because you've gone to university. What's the journey there from university? So many people talk about how it completely changes them and etc. But you've identified at this point the things you've mentioned. How are you then, without family, without the foster family, without, I don't know if you were in a relationship or anything at the time, but how are you then figuring out how to go forward, how to lead? Because it's very difficult. I think there's one thing leading people, but I think is, me personally, I believe you have to be able to lead yourself. Yeah. First and foremost, before you start leading everybody else. But I mean, lead yourself well. So what was going on for you at that point?
I think a couple of things. So again, my world opened up because it was the first time I really interacted with Black people. Yeah. So even though I had my family, suddenly I had peers. I had a group of peers who were Black. I had a girlfriend that was Black. You understand? And so this is new to me. This is radically new to me. So literally, and then somebody told me to read Malcolm X. Okay. Who told me to read that? You understand? Okay.
Not even Martin. Malcolm.
Malcolm, I went straight to Malcolm, you understand? And so therefore my worldview started to change radically, yeah? And so there was this expansion in terms of consciousness that I started to engage with, which again was really important because suddenly I have this personalized blah, 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 but my consciousness is starting to really open up.
Right.
Yeah? My thought process is starting to open up. My ability to articulate myself is starting to open up. My ability to form opinions is starting to open up, yeah? And so that was really, really important. And also I think there were, again, you're starting to engage with different people. So for example, you're starting to see different types of leaders. So you're at the top sports university in the country, yeah? Okay. And so suddenly you're starting to see leadership in very different ways in terms of sporting individuals who are leading themselves, yeah, but very influential in terms of how they lead other people as well. So suddenly you're observing people. So even like I remember one of my coaches was Ernest Obeng. At the time, he was the fastest African in the world. Yeah, he was an incredible guy, but he had this really quiet demeanor, but he was so powerful. Yeah, and so you're starting to see leadership in different ways because often we get sucked in by the charismatic, the loud person, as opposed to the quiet ones who are often more powerful. Yeah. And so I was starting to take all this stimulus in. Yeah. And it was shaping me and molding me. And again, you find yourself, people gravitating towards you, people listening to your opinions, people listen, even if you haven't got much to say sometimes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But it's all kind of starting to formulate and you're almost, where there is a leadership role, people are almost deferring to you or pushing you to the front, and you don't necessarily refuse it because okay, fine, because you feel that you can do this.
Did you feel worthy at that time?
Good question. Probably not, because I don't think that came for a long time.
So how did you step it? Because me personally, I know if I was in that situation, just knowing my character, I don't know if I would have stepped into those spaces, even though I'm being pushed, because of my self-worth. I'd be trying to find that before I find it. How did you manage to step into those spaces and confidently do what was required, or did you?
I think there's a couple of things. Because life has always been, well, you just got to do it anyway. You just do it. And maybe because you don't know the rules of the game, just do it yourself anyway.
Was there anyone influential in your life at that point that I suppose you looked to as an example, or?
No. 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 The only person potentially is my brother came and found me. So because my brother had gone to Loughborough many years before me, yeah? And he came and found me, and I remember him finding me at Loughborough. And this is he's a guy that I've really got an incredible relationship with, yeah, even though we're distant, but we're close. Does that make sense, yeah? Okay. And what he showed me was, it's possible. Yeah? I mean, like, my brother has done exceptionally well in life, yeah? But what happened is that he was in London, he was in the queue to buy something in a Woolworths, and this white female jumped in front of him, and the cashier served that person, even though it was very clear that
he was line first.
My brother went home, said, give me my money, I'm going home. Give me my ticket money, I'm gone. Because I refused. And when you see what he's doing now, it is exceptional. And that was like, what I love is I love people's stories, but I don't really have a lot of people. I say, I don't idolize people.
Yeah.
I love your stories. I love to get to know you. Okay. But I've never really had many people I say, I look up to that person.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Because if I'm going to look up to you, I need to know you. So, for example, I'm not into, even though I find people fascinating, their stories fascinating, if I don't know the truth of it, because sometimes we hear the glossy bits, but that doesn't interest me. I want to know the truth.
Truth of it.
I remember I had one person, this is many years kind of later, Shay Obikin is an incredible person. He's the CEO of Centrepoint. He was my mentor for a period of time. But he had a history where he had failed big. That's what interested me.
What was the point for you when you realized that you had opinions, you had a voice, and these could actually do something or change something or shape? What was the point that you thought, I'm going to lend or give my opinions and my voice to change something, to transformationally change something? Where did that happen?
I think there's a couple of things. I think that there was never a deliberate intention. I think I kind of fell into it. And I think I fell into it in terms of working with young people. So I think one of the things I knew is that I had a passion to want to give back because of my experience. So once I'd been to university and started to reflect and get a realization, I then wanted to work with young people. And so I worked initially in a psychiatry unit for adolescents in Swanage, which was a nightmare. Okay, and then I came to London and I worked in residential social work, and it was really about how do I help these young people so that they don't have to, I think it was about they don't have to experience what I had to experience, and so for me it was about giving a voice to individual children, having those relationships. And it's really interesting because one of them literally found me 20 years later, and it was really profound. It was really small things because I visited my current church, and I came with the intention to visit. I had no intentions of staying there. And there's this young man and he's literally kicking the chair. And I think, what's wrong? To the person in front of him. And he comes up to me at the end and says, "You don't remember me, do you?" He goes, "When I was 7 years old, you were the first person to take me to the cinema. You were the first person to say that you are value, you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And in that moment, it's like, wow, you have, And so you're leading, but you're just doing it by default. You're just doing what you should be doing. So it was never necessarily a intentional, deliberate act. It was simply being, and just trying to give others hope, coping mechanisms, and not just coping mechanisms, because one of the things I found really unjust was young people in care, literally their life chances are really, really poor. And to me, that just wasn't fair. The fact that they were unlikely to go to university, or just wasn't fair. And so for me, it's like, what can I do to contribute to this? And then I found myself working in youth justice, and suddenly Black kids who, I remember that we dealt with this case and they deliberately waited for this young person to turn to adulthood to arrest him. And I just looked at that and it was just like, this is not fair. So I think for me, this issue of fairness and justice has driven me. And then I remember I became a complaints manager. So nobody else wanted this job. To become a complaints manager in social services, nightmare job. But I was driven by justice. I was driven by hearing the stories of people and the way they have been treated by the system. And it wasn't fair.
Interesting, because you have said that, and we said this off camera as we were talking, we were just identifying that what happened to you when you were a child seems so detached from, emotionally detached from where you are now. But what led you into that space, that justice space, seems to have been shaped, driven largely by your own experience. Were you aware of that at the time?
I think I had the desire to give back.
Yeah.
I had the desire to help people, but I didn't necessarily understand it was driven by my experience. Maybe there was some reflection at when I was at university, because again, my mind was starting to open up.
Yeah.
Okay. But it was just like an inner drive. It was an inner drive. So I didn't kind of sit down and construct life. It was just like, there's just something. Yeah.
Was it cathartic at all?
Yeah, it was. Do you know when you have these moments with young people, which one of the things I think we don't understand is that it could be a 5-minute conversation that can change someone's life forever. Yeah. And that's actually very, very powerful. That actually, when you see something in a young person, so you see all the notes written on them, they're this, they're that, but you see this as a scared kid, that this kid's got so much potential, but because of the system that acts stupid, you know, one of the things that so many smart kids deliberately dumb down, yeah, that hurts me. Yeah, that really pains me. And I think, again, jumping back to my childhood, I remember one of the things I hate, and I know that's a strong word, is lost potential. It grieves me. So my friend, his name is Darren Bettridge, we grew up together. He is, without doubt, the best footballer I have ever seen in my life. Didn't do anything with it. And it grieved me. It grieved me to the core that you've got this talent and you're not doing anything with it. And I remember there was another young man, and he was good, but he couldn't get in our top team. He went on to play Premiership football. But the kids with real talent, I mean, immense talent, you know, like that Brazilian quality of just natural, did nothing with it. And so I think that those things have really shaped me in terms of, it grieves me. So when you talk about AKD, Stimulating Brilliance, it stems from, I've seen what it means for talent just to waste. Yeah.
So you've gone through all of this. You've come past university. You're in the justice system. You're driven by justice, and that, I suppose, that sociology degrees coming.
Social psychology.
Social psychology coming in massively. How did you then make that transition into leadership, thought leadership, like in terms of working from a senior level, advising governments? How did that happen?
So I think, I'm in this space which, again, do you know when you just start to see the jigsaw in terms of how things work out? I'm in this job as a complaints manager. And it's like, who wants to be a complaints manager? I mean, like, on your wish list, it would never appear. But what happens is that I'm actually really good at this. I'm really good at terms of putting a system together. I'm really good at conducting investigations. I'm really good at trying new things. And one of the things I've always been doing is like break the rules. Yeah. How can we make this happen within the rules, but maybe just breaking it slightly? Yeah. And so for me, it was like, I remember we had this young child who had never been to Nigeria, and they were about to deport her. Social was about to deport us. Yeah. It was just like, what? It's not happening. Yeah. And so these things are really shaped in terms of, how do we make things happen? How do I make things happen? So when I was at Lewisham, basically I was a complaints manager, and I became very influential in terms of how we shape complaints in social services in London. Yeah, because there's this panel, and I'm one of maybe the 7 very influential people. I'm one of them. Yeah, and we're developing policy, but we're also developing. So people are developing policy, and I'm looking at not necessarily the policies, but the innovative ways to actually, how do we resolve things? So most people are following a script in terms of, this is the process, stick to the process. I'm looking at, this isn't humanized. How do we humanize this process? How do we make it so that this is a caring process? So the first thing when I was a complaints manager, I wrote our staff care policy, because I said, if we don't care for our staff, we're never going to get them to engage in the process.
Right.
So I'm thinking differently about the same system. Does that make sense? And I'm looking at how do we make this a resolution focus? How does it make it sensitive? Because we are meeting people at their very worst and in very vulnerable situations. And often we behave like we don't care. And so for me, those were the things that started to create this genesis in terms of there's another way. And I think that's always been that's kind of my, there's another way.
Yeah.
There's a better way.
That's your superpower.
Yeah.
Being able to think
It
different.
almost, yeah. There's another way to do this and let's explore, let's see what happens. I got IKEA in, yeah. Soft furniture in the office space, didn't ask permission. Yeah, I said, yeah, I'll take the rap later on. So I bought IKEA in and it was just revolutionary to them. But for me, it was just like, I wonder what happened if we did this. Yeah, because IKEA is pretty young, like new. They were up for it. We were up for it. My staff were inspectors. You have no business being in the office. Yeah, you should be doing one of two things, either inspecting or writing reports. Writing reports in an office doesn't make sense. Yeah, yeah. When are you expecting? You need to be inspecting when they least expect it. So therefore, you're expecting between 9 and 5. They're ready for you. But you're expecting at 10 o'clock at night, they're not.
Right.
Yeah. So again, we started to break the rules. Yeah, or break convention in terms of how do we do things. And so for me, that was the genesis of really in terms of leadership. That was the first time I think I was really recognized in terms of leadership, or I started to acknowledge, actually, I'm a leader, because people were much more conscious than the titles came with it, etc. But it was never conventional just to do what others are doing. It was always about, there's another way.
There's another way.
Yeah.
There's another way. And I suppose with that other way in mind, you, because you've been leading your organization now for what, 15, 16 years?
Yeah.
That, again, breaking with convention of, you know, I suppose many people would be thinking, well, I'm very comfortable, I'm in senior leadership, I'm doing what I'm doing. But breaking with convention of that and then setting up your own organization to stimulate brilliance, as you say, and challenge like everyday thinking. How did you make that transition? How did you say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to take this risk? And was the voice still in play at that point?
Ooh, was the voice still in play? Good question. And my honest answer, I can't remember, but I knew that I was driven by something, yeah? So there was a gap between AKD and me leaving. So what happened is that I got to the point where I'm the youngest person in my position in the country. Okay, so I feel I'm 30 years old. And my next step is assistant director. Yeah, and I look at them, I'm not doing it.
No.
But I'm also very entrepreneurial. So on the side, I'm doing property.
Right.
Yeah, I'm doing property. Yeah. So literally sometimes I'm coming into meetings in my suit with like plaster on my suit, which is dusting it off because I'm running out to my site, etc. So the entrepreneur really kicked in.
Right.
And it really kicked in when my son was born. Yeah, so my son was born and I remember looking at him and thinking, wow, I've got to provide for you. And something just kicked in. I went into overdrive in terms of, so that entrepreneurial spirit, and you know, Nigerians, for spirit, you are very entrepreneurial, yeah? Okay, so it was always kind of there because trying little things, buy this, sell this, etc. Yeah, that was always there, but then suddenly it just went into overdrive and basically I got into property. But I had an epiphany one day. I'm doing an action learner set and there's this, the guy I have to give thanks to, his name is Ethan Charles. He was at the time one of the most prominent black, trainers, facilitators around. Yeah, okay, incredible guy. And I'm doing an action learning set, and I just have this epiphany moment because made us do this exercise where we visualize ourselves moving forward. And I remember I could actually taste the mango in my mouth as I visualized. I could see myself walking on the beach, and it was in Grenada, such and such, and it happened. It came to life 6 years later. The very, very vision that I had, my children running down the beach, it actually came to life. Yeah. And I had an epiphany and I went, I'm not doing this anymore. And I left that session, went to my director and I said, I'm leaving. And he said, you can't. And I said, watch me, I'm gone. 30 days later, I was gone.
Oh.
Yeah, didn't tell my wife.
Oh.
Yeah, not the best and not something I would advise.
Yeah.
My son's in private school, my daughter's in nursery, so I've got bills and they're not small bills. I left, I walked out of my job. That was my daughter's, she's 27 years ago. 27 years ago, walked out of my job. And that year was crazy because like 30 days, I sat in my house, nothing, no phone calls, no nothing.
What do you have at this time, Akin? Like, are you a man of faith at this time? Like, what are you resting on to say it's going to be okay? Or is it just there's another way?
There's another way.
That's
Because
it.
even at that point, I don't think I was even in church.
Right, okay.
So I'm driven by faith, but I don't know it's faith.
Okay.
So I don't have a context to call it faith, but I'm driven.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know there's another way and I know that I can do better. And I know that my life was limited in this space. Yeah. So it's not being this area. I knew that it couldn't contain me and it couldn't give me the lifestyle I wanted for myself and my family.
Right.
And so I walked out.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the moment that I think, yeah, again, that's one of those moments where like, whoa, I've done this. Haven't told wifey. Yeah. Nothing's really coming in because even though you're doing property, it doesn't mean you got lots of money.
No.
Yeah. And then I get my first phone call from one of my former directors who went to another local authority and said, Akin, I need you to come and help with the complaint stuff. That was the beginning of the journey.
But wasn't that like going back, like into complaints realm? Or?
Yeah, so I was doing complaints, but it was like, for me, it's like easy. Yeah. So it starts the consultancy journey. And that consultancy journey then starts to evolve really quite rapidly. Yeah, because then I find myself doing a complaints convention. Yeah? A complaints conference is like, you know, yeah. But Toyota were in the room. Yeah.
Right, okay.
And I said, we like what you do. Can you do this? When's the next time you're in Brussels? And of course the answer was, I'm not. Yeah, son, but
next week, yeah.
I can make time for you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And so it all started to unravel from there. It's only later in life that you become much more conscious because I've been faith driven. So people ask me for business plans and such. I've never had business plans. I've never had yeah.
Just go with it.
I just go.
With the feeling. With the
I
emotion.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get on my team's nerves because I said, this is what we're doing. Where's the plan? There's no plan. But like, yeah, I don't think I've ever had a business plan that I've stuck to, ever.
No. I do want to move on to something else, but just on that point, with no plan, I mean, sometimes you get the idea, but if there's no plan and there's no outline for implementation, do you find that it worked out, or is it, can it be quite temperamental in how it's executed?
So I think there's two sides to this, yeah? One of the things I've had to do is I've had to mature, yeah, and put people around me who love that stuff. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a balance in terms of it's almost like you go off and do your stuff, yeah, but we're going to put some scaffolding and some structures around it, yeah? Because otherwise I'm here, yeah? Because that's the nature of who I am, yeah? So I've had to mature and grow because if we're going to scale the company and we're going to grow, there's got to be some structure. But the second thing is this, which business plan have you ever written that has truly ever worked out?
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know what we should.
Yeah. Yeah. If you ask most businesses, if they were truly to be honest, and you look at that original document and where you've ended, yeah, they will not look the same. They will not align.
But it forms some form of a path, though. I'm not saying it's the same. I mean, I've written business plans, and no, I haven't achieved everything on there, but there's been some that have
10%, 20%, 30%.
I mean, this is about you. But no, I get what you're saying, but I think really it's about having that yin and yang. It's about having people who probably more strategically focused in that way. Because what's coming across to me is that you're the visionary. You're the one that's kind of got the idea, and then it's got to be put in place.
Absolutely, and that's the maturing, yeah. Because like I'm a few years ago, Professor Jules Goddard wrote a book and he featured me in the book. It's called Maverick Leadership.
Oh, okay.
And what it did, it helped me to, that's what it means. It goes, you're a maverick. Yeah? You don't like structure. You like to create, you like to do things, yeah? And that's me. Too many mavericks is called chaos. Yeah?
And too many structures is that called? Let's do.
I respect people who like structure and I've seen the benefit of that, but it irritates me. So I've got to be measured in terms of you guys do that, but just give me the space to do what I want to do.
What I want to do. I know that leads me nicely onto this next part, because one of the things you're passionate about is disruptive learning.
Yeah.
And I think we've kind of got a gist of what that might mean just from what you've told us already. But can you kind of open that up a bit more in terms of what is it? What is disruptive learning? Anything with the word disruptive, people normally go, no.
Absolutely.
But this is something that you've really coined and put forward.
One of the things for me is, if you think about, we have no idea what the world's going to look like in the next 5, 10, 15 years, yeah? How do we as organizations shape the learning to prepare for that future? Yeah? And the second thing is this, yeah? If you look at the latent skills and talents of people that are just sitting there doing nothing, I think it is unconscionable that we have so much talent sitting in organizations and we're not tapping into it. So therefore, how do we tap into that brilliance, not only for that person, but for the sake of your organization? And the reality is if we are simply going to do what's conventional, you're going to get conventional results. Yeah. You may iterate, you may get some improvements. Yeah. But your best intended future lies in something very, very different. And to get there, you've got to disrupt. And so for me, disruptive learning is a process where we really break convention and allow new possibilities to emerge. Okay. And what we have to do is this, yeah, in terms of doing that, there's some things that we need to think about. So for example, if you think about how we learn right now, in school, you're rewarded for getting things right and you're penalized for getting things wrong. True? Yeah? That's why I said, if you think a lot of education is the art of regurgitation, okay? But life's not like that.
True.
Yeah? So some of the most important inventions that have been created were mistakes. Yeah? I'll give you
give me an example. Go on.
Coca-Cola.
Mistake.
It was a mistake.
What were they trying to do?
So basically it was this guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he had been injured during a war and he had a injury and he was trying to get off a certain drug. So he was experimenting, and by mistake he created Coca-Cola. Yeah? Post-its, you use post-its? It was a mistake. It was an accident. The microwave, it was an accident. It was a mistake. Okay? So if you think about the fact that some of the most profound inventions we've had and some of the most profound learnings that we undertake come from mistakes, yeah? And yet we penalize people for doing it. We are literally, killing some of the best ideas that you could ever have.
So are you almost saying that we should be making mistakes?
We should be allowed to make mistakes. So I'm working with a housing association in Knowsley, Liverpool, yeah? And the first thing we're saying, we're going to experiment and it's okay to make mistakes. And what's very interesting is it should be a very liberating statement, but it's actually a very scary statement because they're used to that we will be penalized because we are judged upon performance, and performance is about getting things right. But actually, our greatest learning for any individual, for any human being, is when things go wrong. Yeah? So if we truly want to get the best out of people within parameters, yeah? So don't cut off my leg, yeah? Because that's not a mistake, that's just negligence, yeah? But within parameters, yeah, mistakes are some of the most dynamic learning experiences you will ever have. And if we can capture that, yeah, we can create something brilliant. The other thing is this, we learn backwards. So we look backwards to create a history that's never been done. I mean, to create a future that's never been created. How can we look back, especially in terms of the Industrial Revolution, 1960s, 1970s, to something that we don't know and think that this learning backwards is going to help us moving forward? Yeah. So we've actually got to think about how do we lean forward? How do we do things in a very different way to untap potential and people's understanding and their ideas so that we can create the best future? And so it's a very liberating, it is very different because it is not for every aspect of every organization, but there's so many different parts. So playfulness, if you think about playfulness, children create from nothing. That's what they do.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we even inhibit children not because we give them tablets and we give them Xboxes, etc. There's still some level of creativity in that. But if you remember, a lot of kids, when they were like, go and play, they created something from nothing.
True.
Surely that is one of the most important skills for leaders in terms of designing the future. Yeah. We are in a season of technology which is rapid. Yeah. I mean, I was on a train to Birmingham and I sat down opposite this gentleman. And do you know when you're on a train, you don't want to talk to anybody? And you just like, don't talk. You know, when you see them sit down, you think, please don't talk to me. This guy opened up my world.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that possible? He showed me in 1 hour and 20 minutes, he opened up my world to technology in a way I didn't know was possible. Right. Yeah. And so therefore, it's possible, but we often restrict ourselves. And we can learn lessons from those who have stayed with convention and have died. It's called blockbusters. Yeah. Now, don't forget, Netflix met with blockbusters and said for, I think it was like for a figure of $50 million, you can buy us. And they laughed them out of the room. Yeah. Because they were so hell-bent on convention. Yeah. Which was, do you know how they made their money? Late returns.
Late returns. Oh,
that was a significant point, yeah? So they were so hell-bent on their conventional model because leaders are judged upon performance and my bonus is based upon now, not the future, that I am restricted in terms of my capacity to create something new.
Wow. Okay. So allow ourselves to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about some of the social environments that are shaping our lack of disruptive behavior. You know, you've talked about allowing ourselves to make mistakes. You've talked about being playful. You've talked about leaning forward instead of leaning backward.
Yeah.
Everything you've talked about being the opposite of, so to speak, I see in our educational system, in the structures that we are formed to become normalized with. They're doing they're shaping our way of thinking, and I think to be disruptive, it's a difficult process when every piece of information that you're given is telling you to do this. How can we then, as individuals and just general society, especially like certain communities, disrupt our way of thinking?
The first thing is awareness.
Right.
Yeah, you have to understand what are you being locked into. School is still based upon an agrarian calendar.
Yeah.
We don't do harvest anymore. Yeah, I don't know the last time you sent your children out to, you know what I mean, collect wheat from the field. Yeah. We are still working on a system of conformist. We need a workforce that knows how to do certain things. And this is only slowly unraveling. But the problem is this system is slowly unraveling, but society is moving very, very quickly. Very, very quickly, yeah? And therefore, there's this gap opening up wider and wider and wider. So there's got to be an awareness in terms of what, yeah, and why. Why are we creating systems, yeah, that fundamentally benefit a few, yeah, to the detriment of most people? Now, the thing is this, if you don't recognize that you are being disadvantaged, yeah, you will go along with what's happening.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're, and again, this is not being too disrespectful, but if your dream is to get the house and the car, blah, 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 yeah, even the fact that you have got your debt debted up to, yeah, but you look good, Yeah, so you've got a Mercedes and you've got the house, so you look good, but you can't afford it. Yeah, you've ticked the box that society wants you to tick.
Conformed.
Yeah, you've conformed. Yeah, okay. When you come to the realization that there's another way, there's a better way, yeah, and that you're going to be brave enough to step out of what society expects of you to do it the way in which you fundamentally truly are driven by, yeah, it can happen, but it requires a level of bravery. Yeah, I remember I was in Antigua with my wife on our anniversary, and I remember I was walking on the beach every day in the morning, and it was just so amazing. And I would come back, do a couple hours work before, because obviously the time difference, and then I would sit down and have breakfast with my wife, and I was thinking, there's a better way. Because when I'm in London, I don't do that. I hardly see my wife. We're like, because I'm doing that, yeah. But we get sucked into this, yeah? But if you truly understand there's a better way, and I can do this, and I can achieve this, we start to disrupt ourselves.
But are we fighting, is there a losing battle here, or is this the time for this disruptive learning, this disruptive? Because you can feel the pushback.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial ventures have grown
Yes, absolutely.
massively in the last decade. And the pushback now that's coming from government, you know, to really put that pressure on businesses and whatever, it's like containment. And I suppose there'll be a lot of people out there saying, you're right, but it's so hard. You know, so in your opinion, how do you see the future? Like, what should be happening and what is possible?
What is possible? I think I have a particular desire for Africa. Yeah, it's just in my blood. Yeah, that this continent, which has some of the most amazing talent in the world, that has resources beyond measure, yeah, can be in such a detrimental position. Yeah, and that is very deliberate. Okay, think about this. Yeah, how can a continent that has billions in terms of aid thrown at it still be impoverished?
It's never made sense.
Yeah. So we have to conclude somehow that there is a strategy about this that maintains an impoverished state. Yeah. What people will do is say, oh, it's about the leadership, et cetera, yeah, okay. There will be an element of truth to that. But I would suggest to you that there is a intentional strategy, yeah, that means that we ensure that there is enough given that they cannot succeed. Yeah? The president of Ghana is making it very clear. The president of Ghana is making it very, very, very clear right now. He said, we don't want your money. Yeah? And he is causing waves amongst Europe. I mean, there's this image on YouTube where he's doing this speech and Macron is there. And Macron is vexed because this man is basically saying, I am not prepared to put up with the status quo where you extract from us, yeah, and give nothing back. Yeah? Okay? And so for me, my excitement would be where Africa, yeah, leadership pushes back, disrupts. My nephew is in fintech, yeah, he's creating a solar energy company, yeah. If you put solar energy to the average person, life transforms. We look at the mobile phone. The mobile phone, what it did to the average person in Africa was transformational. Suddenly I can bank, I can communicate, you understand? I can do these, which were all inhibited. There were barriers. Suddenly those barriers went down. Energy. If we transform energy in Nigeria to the common person, yeah, all bets are off. All bets are off. If we transform, again, how can Nigeria we are one of the richest countries in terms of oil, and we export oil to have it refined and brought back in. If we change these things, literally all bets are off. But you have to understand, as I said, a minority benefit so that the majority don't. And until there's an awareness of this, yeah, and conscious decisions to change that, nothing's going to change. But I think one of the things that you're seeing even in developed countries is there is this fear starting to emerge amongst the wealth, yeah, that this gap is becoming maybe a bit too wide. And actually, we could find ourselves in problems if it gets wider. Yeah, I'm watching programs. I watch this program, and this is a former kind of JP Morgan executive. The man is basically planning for, yeah, that level of social disruption. He has got his hideaways, etc., food there, because he said, if it happens, I'm ready. And he says, I'm not the only one doing this.
And I believe it.
Yeah.
I think they're showing us, and we're not paying attention.
Yeah.
I watched an episode, I'm going to confess now. I watched an episode about 3 or 4 years ago of the Kardashians.
Okay,
And,
we'll forgive you.
But they were shopping for bunkers.
Yeah.
Underground bunkers.
Why?
It was the most bizarre episode because I just happened to catch it.
No, so it's okay, we believe you.
Yeah. They were shopping for bunkers, and I thought, this is really a stupid episode. But actually, it was very transparent. They are telling you, we, the wealthy, are looking for, this disruption that could happen. We need to be in a space where, we survive. And I remember afterwards thinking about it and thinking, well, what do we do? What do the non 1% do? And how do we apply pressure to that? With what you do, you have trained and, brought in that disruptive learning, I'm not going to say concept, but ethos into some of the most prolific organizations in the world, in terms of their size and what they do. And I'm sure you can name quite a few, if we talk about them. And I think that's absolutely amazing because, the senior leadership, to think that you're really disrupting circles like that. But I think what's really kind of like playing on my mind here, Akin, is the smaller man, the one that isn't in those rooms, isn't in that space, but is actually really trying to shape and change society in the ways that we know it. Because when it comes down to how we, interact with, say, technology or finance or how we support our communities or our families, build wealth, generational wealth, all those kind of things, it's us. It's not coming necessarily from the top. So when we talk about disruptive leadership and the future of leadership, I guess I really want to know what you see for that space, for the smaller businesses, the medium-sized, the business that are being started by or run by people from ethnic diasporas. What is your viewpoint of what it is now and where it's going?
I think we have an incredible opportunity if we seize it. And I think there are a number of variables to that. Yeah. I think George Floyd was a seminal moment. Yeah. Because, putting it very bluntly, the world witnessed a man being lynched.
Yeah. We did.
Yeah.
We did.
And it suddenly changed the narrative and the conversations about race. Yeah.
What do you think was different about that moment in comparison to Rodney King?
COVID.
Okay.
Because we were in our houses. We had nowhere to go.
We were paying attention. Right.
Social media. Yeah. That combination meant that suddenly this was in our face and we had nowhere to hide. Yeah. And that was very profound because it suddenly started to change the whole narrative in the Western Hemisphere around race. Yeah. Okay. Secondly, technology is moving at such a rapid pace. Yeah. And suddenly people have access to technology in ways that they didn't have before. Yeah. ChatGPT sounds like, yeah. But what this thing can do and where it's going means that you can have access to knowledge and information and create things there in a speed that was never there before.
Right.
Yeah. There is definitely an entrepreneurial spirit which has come after COVID, because COVID basically allowed people to say, I'm done with this way of life. Yeah. And so this kind of combination of things, yeah, is really opening up opportunities. Now, what does leadership look like moving forward? I think a big thing is this. We have been, let's say, indoctrinated into planning. Yeah, plan. Yeah. But planning works on the basis of complicated, not complex. Let me give you what I mean. If something is complicated, there is a set of structures which can get you an end. So for example, if you're going to manufacture a car, it's quite a complicated process. But if you do this and this and this and this and this and this and this, you will get to this here. Yeah. Whereas life has become more complex, which means that we do not have the same ability to predict. Yeah. And so therefore, we need to start moving from planning to preparedness. Okay. I'll give you an example. Those who are responsible for pandemics, this is what they would say. We will have another pandemic. We don't know where and we don't know when, but we must be prepared. Yeah. You can't plan, because to plan means that it's going to happen on this particular date in this particular region, so we can plan. We can't do that, but we need to be prepared.
Right.
Bring that down now to your leadership of your organization. Yeah. Okay. There's a certain level of planning that you must do, but more important to your leadership, you've got to be prepared to be able to respond very quickly to what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you've got to be able to create what's happening.
Yeah.
If you think about the Zuckerbergs, et cetera, they're creating the future, but they started small. True? They started small. They didn't exist, 20 years ago? They didn't exist. They didn't even exist. And so therefore, the ability to scale is incredible as well. Yeah, okay. So I think there is a combination of things which allow us, yeah, to break into spaces that weren't always available to us. So I got another, one of my clients used to be DB Schenker, one of the largest logistical companies in the world. And the CEO, this is 72,000 staff globally, huge organization, very successful, brilliant organization. But the CEO recognized that with the advent of change in society and technology, etc., he said, we could be out of business in 10 years. He said, you have people sitting in their homes, yeah, on a computer that can say, do you have any space for a cargo container? Okay. You have space. I've got this customer here, bam, 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 bam. So from your home, you can run a cargo business. That was never there before.
Right.
And it's colorless. True?
Yeah, it's because it's digital.
Absolutely. So you don't need to know what I look like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's face it, because of racism, if they know what you look like, they're going to put you at disadvantage. But if they know that, okay, this service, blah, 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 they don't need to know what you look like.
That is so true, and so disturbing to know that somebody would rather talk to an automated robot than a person of colour in a business.
Exactly.
Yeah. Recently, as I said at the beginning of the interview, I bumped into you last year and you had written a book. And I am actually very privileged to be holding the very, very first copy, which is why it's got that, it's Amazon. Yeah. But Dominion Mandate, fulfilling your divine purpose in the marketplace. This is like a really pivotal, defining moment, because I feel like this, I haven't read the book yet because it's just being released now.
Yeah.
This is taking all of this, but putting it into, I suppose, understanding for the individual, but also from a Christian, a faith-driven perspective.
Absolutely.
And which we haven't talked about too much of your journey, but so I slightly want to backtrack to come to this, because you said, and you touched on it, the voice said to you, you weren't put here to be poor. And you've been driven by the things like social justice, faith that you weren't aware of, as you mentioned. But where was the pivotal moment when you said, actually, whoa, something much bigger is going on in my life than just wanting to be a great leader, than just wanting to transform change?
Gosh.
What happened? And what led you
to
write this book?
The deeper I got with God, the more that he showed me. And I never signed up to this. I signed up to the faith, but I'm an elder in my church. I didn't sign up to that. Yeah, I did not sign up to lead people. Yeah, but it's a calling. Yeah, and this is one of the first times. So me setting up companies of my own volition and such. Yeah, but the calling on my life, that is very, very different. And it has a very different weight to it to setting up a company, because suddenly you have a responsibility for people in a way that is very different. Yeah. So as a CEO of AKD, I recognize I'm responsible for ensuring that these families get fed. And it never escapes me. But the feeding of people here is so much different. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's been very pivotal. I've been in ministry for a while, but I've also had this passion for business and ministry. And he gave me the concept of Dominion Mandate years ago, but I just didn't do anything with it. And I don't think I was in the right space in terms of maturity, or the right space in terms of where I was in terms of the actual church I went to really do anything with it. But what happened 2 years ago, I started working with a group of business owners in church. And we would meet every other Saturday. And there was no structure, but it was so powerful. It was so powerful. And I was just pouring out. Pouring out with them. So we were meeting initially on a monthly basis, and it got to 2 weekly. And every 2 weeks, there's like, maybe 10, 15 business, and we are how to do business God's way.
Wow.
Yeah. And we search the scripture. So everything I do is it's based on scripture. Because I'm telling you that the Bible is the best business manual ever written. And if you can tap into the best business manual ever written, and you can believe it and you can apply it, then what does it mean?
Yeah.
You must get results.
Yeah.
So fast forward, I think it was July, God woke me up at 4:00 in the morning, because I know that's not me. Yeah. Okay. So I've been doing this for 2 years with this group, and it's been really powerful, and I'm loving it. And you're starting to see them grow. Some people came with an idea. Now they're running, the business has kind of taken off. Some people have just taken it forward. And I've just literally started the second cohort as well. Yeah. But God woke me up. Made me go downstairs, go to a website, register, Dominion Mandate. So up until now, it's just ministry in terms of me just pouring out. There's nothing, I'm just pouring out. Yeah. Suddenly, go on this website, register the company. I'm literally doing this on And then he says, when I registered the company, he said, write the book and design the game. And so, I design games. Yeah.
I think we need to that needs to be shared a bit, because you are well known for doing that. I think you're a spearhead in that in that area of board games and training and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So with AKD, what we do is that we design learning maps. Learning maps are essentially games, and we combine playfulness with the power of conversation. Yeah, so we've created these learning maps, and they're incredible tools for learning. And pre-COVID, 98% of my customers had a learning map. We have designed learning maps, which we have literally translated into languages, 16 languages. They've gone global. So literally there are countries all over the world, from Russia to China to Japan, where clients are using our learning maps.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a really incredible. So I had this real gift for designing these learning maps, but I did it one time many years ago, but I just parked it for the kingdom. But God said, write the book and design the game. And I went, okay. But writing a book feels like a really daunting task. Yeah. So he said, everything you've taught and every sermon you've preached is the book. So suddenly I'm just pulling together
Okay.
everything that I've poured out.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And then suddenly I'm bam, 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 bam. Oh, hence Dominion Monday. It was an incredible journey. I mean, like I started in maybe September and literally the boxes are arriving today. Yeah, and we're launching in a few days' time. Yeah.
So this is a very special day then.
It's very, very special to me. Yeah.
So what is the Dominion Mandate?
Okay. The first words that God speaks to man is have dominion. The very first words, he uttered, was an instruction, is that you must have dominion. We were created to have dominion. The Dominion Mandate is about you excelling in the marketplace as a person of God, based upon his principles, not your own. So there's some very fundamental differences. So the Dominion Mandate is not about making as much money as possible. The Dominion Mandate is about having as much impact as possible. And the first rule for me is this, your business should be a soul winning vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you're part of my cohorts, the first rule is this, your business should be a soul winning vehicle that people, because of your business, will get to know Christ. That's the baseline.
So the 6 Dominion Mandate circles, can you explain to us what they are, how they link, and how they create the whole Dominion Mandate?
No problem at all. So fundamentally, what you have is that you have these 6 circles. 3 are inner and then 3 are outer. So the 3 that are inner are pivotal because then they kind of manifest in the outer. So the first one is this, nurturing your relationship with God. Number 1, without apology, is about how do you develop that deep relationship with God.
Right.
So, and I equate it to when in scripture you see Adam was walking with God in the cool of the day. So just imagine you're literally walking and have a conversation. We have that same opportunity with the Holy Spirit. Second one is developing your character. Because the reality is in business, people do business with people they like. Whether we like it or not, And so it's developing that character. So there's a lot of it is about developing character. And we look at 2 Peter 1, and we look at, I call them 7 spiritual muscles, which you need to develop your character. Then it's about fulfilling divine purpose. And so therefore, one of the things that you need to do is that you need to distinguish between ambition and purpose.
Oh, wow.
Yeah?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. And the best way to kind of understand ambition versus divine purpose is that ambition is self-willed, purpose is God-willed. So you've got to understand, am I self-willed in this or am I God-willed?
Right, okay.
Okay, so those are the 3 inners that you've got to, okay? And then on the outer ones, it is developing a great team.
Yes.
Okay. And one of the things that's probably one of my favorite chapters because there's a couple of things in there. So one of them is about how you recruit. And I give the example of David in the cave of Adullam, where 400 broke, busted, and disgusted individuals congregated around him, and he turned them into the mighty men of valor. So what I'm saying is this, we often could be potentially missing out on great people because we're looking on the outer, the CVs, etc., as opposed to who are those people.
Yeah.
And the other thing about that is this, don't avoid your Judas.
Oh.
Yeah.
You like to...
Yeah.
Pressure points.
Don't avoid your Judas.
Okay, so I think everyone knows what Judas did.
So basically, Judas, and what we do is that in life, you will always have a Judas. Okay? But what's important is this, Jesus chose him. Because without choosing him, destiny will not be fulfilled.
Okay, but we also know, we also know what he did. And are you saying that we should deliberately choose people who, war against us in some way?
I would say to you, don't avoid them.
Don't avoid them.
It's very easy to say no.
And get rid of them.
Okay. But I look at my Judases, and I've had plural, and they have been catapulted to the next. It's been painful. Yeah. Been very painful on occasions, but without the Judas is a stimulant to your next. Okay. So developing great teams is really important. And then it's about creating great systems. Yeah. So that is almost, there's one chapter where there's, so where's God in this? God is a God that believes in order and doing things in an excellent way.
Yes.
Okay. And so therefore, does this honor God? Does this system honor God? Yeah. And that between, so for example, one of the things what you have to come to grips with is truthfulness. In business, we are taught to bend the truth.
Right.
To not tell the truth. Right. To give our customers half the story. Yeah. Look at Volkswagen. Yeah. The Dieselgate. Yeah. Business is designed to often trick, fool, deceive your customers. We in the kingdom should never behave like that.
We should be true. I believe that.
Absolutely.
Truthful and transparent and honest.
Yeah. And then the final chapter is divinely inspired solutions. So it's almost like the solution is the last bit. So if you get those bits right, in terms of your relationship with God, develop your character, divinely, purpose, then you get the great team, you get the great systems, your solution will flow. But often we put the solution at the top and everything else at the bottom.
Right. Okay. Do you know what, Akin? This sounds very much like a structure to me.
It is unusual,
Well, for yourself.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it so much, everything actually that you've said makes sense to me. And, as you're saying it, I'm thinking about areas of my own business and where I see that one, don't see that one. Do you know what I mean? And so I think this is going to be so helpful and, just change, it could change the perception of so many people. And I'm assuming it's for those of us who are faith-driven Christian in the marketplace. But is that the audience, or?
That's the prime audience. With any product, you've got to have a prime audience. And my audience is, I want to see those in Christendom flourish. Yeah. But also, I want people who are business owners who don't yet know Christ to pick it up as well.
Pick it up as well. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because I honestly believe what I want is this. I want every book we sell, to contribute to a soul.
Okay.
Yeah?
Wow.
For those who know Christ and those who don't know Christ. Because again, there is so much in there that if you utilize that, things are going to change. But if you utilize it as a non-believer, I don't believe you can use it as a non-believer and not want to get to know the Christ that has given that to me. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Absolutely. I am really excited about this, and also really excited to be coming to the launch in Birmingham. So you've got launch in London, launch in Birmingham.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us about, I'm thinking the time this episode goes out, it might already be out, launch. So where can we purchase it? Where can people buy it?
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, you can go to the website, which is dominion-mandate.com. Okay. Please go there. You can get it on Amazon. I prefer you didn't. I prefer that you came to us directly. But yeah, especially if you're international, you can go on Amazon and collect it, and it's also available on Kindle as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And lastly, the same question I ask all of my guests, because we've talked a lot about leadership, transformational change, disruptive thinking, learning, and all those bits in between that are really going to shape and change businesses, business leaders, large and small, going forward. And I think this Dominion mandate, it's all kind of encompassed in there. So my question to you is, thinking about your social corner and the corner of society that you are changing, the social narrative, social awareness, social development, and disrupting, what's your vision for the next 5 years? What do you want to see take place in that social corner?
I have two big passions, if I'm being very honest, One is how we show up in the marketplace as Christians, but also how we show up as Black people. And one of the things that angers me, and I think this is a real driver, is that the narrative around us as Black people, especially in the marketplace, is one which is very negative. And I'm driven to change that.
Right.
I'm really driven to change that. And I think what I want to see over the next 5 years is that what we had to go through, so the having to be twice as good, having to work twice as hard, having to go up the rough side of the mountain, not having the privilege of mediocrity, and it sounds crazy, but maybe if the generation coming up after us have the opportunity to be mediocre and still succeed, that would be the craziest KPI you could ever think of, but actually that would be a real shift. Because at the moment, mediocre and being Black, you have no chance.
Yeah.
That's the kind of change I want to see. I want to see my children not have to fight as hard as I had to fight. I want them to have a more even playing field. It will not be even, but they will have opportunities. And I want to know that we've given them the platform to make that happen.
I think that's a great vision.
Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant vision. I'm looking forward to seeing that happen. I'm looking forward to reading this. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today. And, I don't normally do this, but I just really feel like I'd love it if you didn't mind to say a little prayer and just close us out.
Thank you. Father, I'm truly grateful for Daina and the crew. And I thank you for this opportunity just to speak. And I pray that your voice has been heard as we have had this opportunity to come together. I pray that it is well, not only with Daina and the team, that they will flourish. In fact, I pray the prayer of Jabez over them, that Daina will say, that you would bless this team indeed and enlarge our territory, that your hand will be upon us, that you will keep us from harm and we have no pain. And what's very important about that prayer, that God granted the request. I pray that every request that Daina and this team make to you, God, you will simply say, permission granted. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Akin. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.